Broadcasting from Salisbury University campus, this is WSDL Ocean City, NPR News Talk 90.7, putting Delmarva first. Stay tuned for Delmarva Today with your host, Don Rush.
The War Museum is celebrating the 50th Annual World Championship Wildfowl Carving Competition and Art Festival. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. The museum is named after the Eastern Shore's most famous decoy carvers, the Ward brothers, Stephen and Lem. And it has seen not only a variety of carvings, but also development of many of the craft's men and women. Celebration, museum's LeMay Gallery will feature some of the best winning pieces. And in our studio this morning is Dominic Tartaglia. He is curator and folklorist for the museum. Welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, well, first of all, tell me then, are you a relative new arrival at the museum? How long have you been there?
Yeah, I got there September.
Okay.
Yeah, I just got finished my PhD and came out to work in a museum, in the museum, and yeah, so it's been like a season here on the Eastern Shore.
So, well, for your own perspective, what got you into being a folklorist? What drove your passion here?
You know, it was like archaeology. Everyone's been long dead. Like mythology, like there's you're dealing with stories rather than dealing with people. I wanted to find something where I could like study like culture and like be having face-to-face conversations with people all the time.
So, have you been involved with looking at particularly at the decoys, which is this particular history that we have at the Ward?
Yeah, I mean, like, believe it or not, out in Indiana where I was, like, we know the Ward brothers. Like, when I taught, like, animal folklore, there was, like, a whole day on decoys, and, like, it's funny going to the museum and, like, seeing pieces. Like, I can remember, like, a particular, like, Victor Perroyan blue-winged teal that's at the museum. And, like, I put that in a PowerPoint slide. Like, I totally recognize this one. Right. So this is this actually, like, is, you know, it's a world championship. This is, like, world-famous art that is, like, that is out here on the Eastern Shore that people know about in circles all across the nation. If it's got to southern Indiana, it's got places, I'll say that.
So tell me a little bit about what impresses you, particularly with the Ward brothers and some of their history.
Ward brothers, I think it's just the it's the details. It's the little things, particularly about the Ward brothers, how like little advancements, little ways that they moved the needle that just ended up being these big paradigm shifts in the art form. Like you look at just like how they were pulling feathers, like how they were just doing like the little brush strokes to paint feathers, and then like after them, like putting feathers on the decoys becomes this like whole like art form. There's this whole like explosion in that in the technique. You know what I mean? That starts off just with little innovations they make that ends up just advancing everything rapidly afterward. Or you look at like the way they would do like you can always tell like a Ward duck the way like the head is kind of cocked. You know, that kind of like lifelike like emotion on the decoy, the way the head is moving, the way the eyes look. It's just a little thing that ends up like snowballing into this big paradigm shift years later. I think that's what impresses me, particularly about the Ward brothers themselves and their art.
Because and at the Ward Museum, by the way, you have a number of like working decoys, mm-hmm. But then you get a transition out. To explain this transition that takes place from, on the one hand, they were like pouring these things out in between cutting hair, as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. But then after a while, it became an art form.
Yeah, after a while, we get into this sort of like what we call like interpretive art. You get all of these carvings that are like statuesque, that have a sort of like a sort of high art sensibility to like this like folk art genre, you know. Right now, as you mentioned, in our 50th anniversary exhibit in the LeMay Gallery right now, we've got some of the stuff like when you get to like the 2010s, we've got like a ruddy duck that looks like it's like a cubist ruddy duck. You have like a frigate bird that like looks like a World War II bomber in the wings. It's got like that like the guts of an airplane in the wings. You know, you've got like just like a burrow that has like a baby wood duck like emerging out of it. I think merging's a good word for like all of this. You know, there's like this emergent quality of like a sort of like a high art sensibility to a folk art tradition. I think that's certainly part of the legacy of Ward Brothers, bringing like the sensibility of fine art to this like a community based tradition of decoy carving. But at the same time, like all of those decoys that were like working decoys in like the 40s and 50s and 60s between cutting hair that they were doing. I mean, like that there is certainly like an art form to that. I mean, like if you really think about it, like the most lifelike thing, the most like realistic thing a decoy does, it floats. Like, can you just like I know like that's kind of like that's the baseline, that's the given, like, oh yeah, that like it's got to float. But even that is like an entire that's like a huge revolutionary achievement. You know what I mean? That like something that like your art can also have this functionality at the same time, and it's always been that. It's been this like reflection of like the culture and the environment. I mean, that's huge just on decoy carving as an art form.
What do you make, by the way? I mean, I've interviewed several of those who carve, and generally speaking, and this is my own impression coming from outside the areas, they're very Eastern Shore. There are a lot of older guys, for instance. I know Rich Smoker, for example, who's involved with your museum. These are not people who you would have think of as being artists.
Yeah, and they're certainly not artists in like the institutional sense. I don't think you can say artists without like tipping your nose
right,
forward anymore.
exactly.
But there really is to show how art exists in communities, how art exists like in our everyday life. I mean, people are artistic in their everyday life, and there's like certain like ways they reflect it. It's especially like the ways these everyday artistic abilities are invested in their community. I think like you think the Eastern Shore, and you think like, okay, decoys, that is like an artistic, like a living artistic tradition that is like invested and reflected in like the life ways of this region. And I mean, just because like you don't learn decoy carving at like an art academy, like I think doesn't mean it's any less artistic or doesn't mean it's any less important. And I think that's the Ward Museum in a it's a big part of the Ward Museum, I should say, is that we're really celebrating like a specific kind of everyday artistic ability, like this specific kind of artistic tradition that's very invested in our community out here. These people might not call themselves like capital A artists, but they do have they have talent, and they have like an investment in their art form, and they have the chops.
Are you surprised that seemingly ordinary people, I don't want to say completely ordinary, but that they become really deeply involved in this, and over a period of years? I mean, some of them who like start carving when they're younger, but others in middle age, they gravitate to this.
It's one of those things. Like I'm surprised. I'm pleasantly surprised every day. It's not like I expect these people to, like you're saying, like ordinary people to like not have this artistic side, but like everyone's got that in their own way. And I just love like working with these people, run across these people who all have that. So like I'm used to it. Can you be used to something and still get like a happy, pleasant surprise every time you see it? That's probably where I'm at. It's like it's a wonderful part of everyday life that we like to celebrate.
The big question is, have you ever tried to carve one of these things?
Oh my god! I mean, like, that's the thing about working in a museum. Just don't look at the cuts on my hand. I'm not. I've in the past I've painted, but one day I'll get to start carving this with the proper safety precautions, because I will be a klutz, and I will nick my own finger. I already know it.
So going so when they go to the museum, what kinds of things are we going to be seeing in your celebration? First of all,
Oof, we've got a whole range of carvings from 1971, the first year that we had the competition, back when it was still in Salisbury, all the way up to the most recent piece is in that exhibit is 2018. There's like the current 2019 winners are on display elsewhere in the gallery until March. And then, of course, April, we crown the new ones. So this retrospective exhibit for the 50th annual goes from 71 to 2018. You'll see all kinds of things. You'll see, like, 1971, you'll see, like, the first world champion pair. You'll see the first miniature to ever be world champion. But you'll see, beyond that, you'll see all types of things. You'll see various interpretive pieces that have this just sense of detail and this grand scope that'll really, it's like they're imaginative. These like imaginative interpretive pieces like the ones I mentioned earlier. You'll see all types of miniatures. You'll see natural finish. You'll see beautiful paintings. You'll see like entire family history, like three winners in one family in this one gallery, like at this exhibit.
what were those like? What were those?
The first one we've got a first one is a pair of canvasbacks that won in 1981. That is Tan Brunet from Galliano, Louisiana, who just recently passed in 2019. His two sons later, one in the 80s, one in the 90s, both won 4 pairs. One of his sons did ruddy ducks that were world champions, and one of his sons did ringneck ducks.
What are those?
We get some ringneck ducks, I think, every now and then on Shoemaker-Con, actually. I think we do every now and then. Kind of like they've got like a stripe, like the head is like black, and then we've got like a stripe here, and then the body goes down like another color. They have this like this band around where like the beak sits down.
Mm-hmm.
So he did a pair of those, I believe in like the early 90s. That's 3 winners in one family. We've got them all in the LeMay Gallery, in the Brunet family from Louisiana. Pat Godden, who's a very accomplished champion, we have his Barrow's Golden Eyes that he carved in 2016. I believe his first world championship was 1976, and we have his 2016 ones. It's just kind of like the long legacy of his storied career. We've got Lynn Branson, the only female world champion. We've got one of her interpretive pieces there that I want to say it's like one of the only ones that's in. I mean, she's Canadian, but it's one of the only ones that's in America, and we have on loan for this exhibit. Getting pieces from Canada
Right.
is kind of difficult, but we have, I want to say, 27 winners in this new exhibit in the gallery right now.
So you have a favorite?
Do I have a favorite? My favorite is the one I alluded to earlier. Is that frigate bird, Anatomy of Flight, by Jeff Crete, who's he's an Ontarian himself. It starts off. Imagine going from left to right. Okay, on this frigate bird, wings out. Mm-hmm. Okay, you're looking at it on your left, and its feathers. It goes to about like the median of the bird's body, where like there's like a varnish, and you can see like a steel sighting on the side of its head, and then the entire what is your right side of the bird I believe it's a DC-10. It's all like an older plane. It looks like the schematics of a plane, trying to draw this connection to flight in nature and then flight in technology, like how our technology relates to the natural world, like the way birds have figured out flight. We have figured out flight. I think it's like a profound statement on not just like, there's like this technological statement about how like humans build planes and how like nature builds birds, but I also think it's this like artistic statement about how like when humans build aircraft, we are really like making our own kind of art reflecting the way that like wings work in nature. It's like a function and like a functionality and aesthetics thing, the way that we take in the natural world and make it like functional for us. It's this really profound piece. I know I'm talking about a frigate bird, which is kind of like a funny looking bird, but it's you just your eye scales across the whole width of this piece, and you're thinking about aircraft and the way the shadow hits it, and it's this dramatic silhouette that looks like a bomber on the back of the wall, and there's steel and feathers, and it's wood, and the base is aluminum. It's just this dramatic piece that's everything like philosophical that I love about art wrapped up in one piece.
Was there any technique or any piece in the exhibit that surprised you? I mean, obviously you liked it, but anything particularly? I mean, at one point I remember, and I don't know if you still have this, but I remember in the museum there used to be one small exhibit in which they compared a real feather to a one that's been carved. I don't know if you still have that or not, but is there any piece that surprised you in terms of the kind of detail that they produce?
There some of the pairs, some of the feathering, having to like touch them and put them under the case. Yeah, exactly. Like some of the detail on the feathers blows my mind. That like you look at this and you're just thinking like, oh, is this wood? I can't believe it. The big one that surprised me, having to like to deal with it in person, having to like get it on loan, put it under the case, is this great aigrette carved by Gary Eigenberger, a multiple world champion, that we have in the new exhibit. You look at this thing and it's about like it's 2 feet tall in total, from like base to like the beak of this bird, and here you have like a kind of about like a foot or like 8-inch long bird, kind of on an angle on a reed, and the reed comes out of this base, and you look at it and you're like, there is no way that reed is not going to snap. That reed looks like, if that, like, there's 2 things that are going on here, like when you look at it. 2 things that could possibly happen. A, that bird is actually going to take off, or B, that reed is going to snap, and neither happens. It's in this state of like the reed that he carved is bending, and the bird is just effortlessly sitting on the edge, on just the precipice of taking flight. And it's just like this, it's like a snapshot of this just, little sublime moment in nature. And someone carved that with like very thin wood and like captured this moment in time. And I think that's like a little, part of the detail, just both like structurally and artistically, like in order for all those things to come together, for this artist to capture that moment, is a ton of details.
Because one of the things that strikes me, particularly as you're talking, is that in many ways, and I've seen some of these in the exhibit, is that the carvings are such that they're almost like a photograph, in the sense that a photograph takes just one instant, right? Just a moment in time, which everything is like in the photograph. It sounds like the carvers have basically done the same thing. It's just this is one single moment, as if they've frozen something in time.
Yeah. I think all my favorite ones are certainly like that. Like this little, it's almost like a unit of time. You can see just like this is just like one piece of this this hypothetical bird's life, and then you really pull yourself back and be like, that was a block of wood before he started carving and painting it. But we come to experience it as like this like, this document, this like this like moment where we have such like imagination. This is like this whole experience in our imagination looking at it.
So we have a number of people, obviously, who are participating, who are carving. Do you see this particular art form increasing in terms of popularity, or particularly in terms of participation and people actually becoming involved in carving? Where do you see that arc in terms of decoy carving?
I mean, you just you mentioned earlier Rich Smoker. I mean, I feel like because he's chairman of the board of directors, I have to brag on behalf of him that he's a National Endowment of the Arts Fellow this year. I mean, that's huge. There's like 5 or 6 artists in the United States who get an NEA fellowship as like not just like his contributions to carving, but it's his contributions to like the life of the arts in America. I mean, that's a huge thing. I mean, we can look at that as like, okay, so we got like the hardware. This art form has like the hardware. They've got an NEA fellow. You see people come out to Worlds, people who come out to let's say like Easton, the Wildfowl Festival up in Easton. You know what I mean? All of that. I see people of all ages going out there, but I think the way you judge wildfowl carving, decoy carving, really like folk art in general, is the communities. You go on that local scale. The local communities thrive. Do the local communities sustain this? Is the tradition being passed down, passed along? And I think especially coming out here, from the Midwest. I mean, there's decoy carving in like the upper Midwest, but like kind of in southern Indiana, there's a little lesson coming out here. Like my big impression from the Eastern Shore is like, this is a community. This is a tradition that is being like sustained and is alive in its local communities of practice.
How important do you think these kinds of art forms are? I mean, obviously we have decoy carving here on the shore, and obviously they have other things in other places of the country. How important do you think that is in particularly maintaining a community's identity?
Oh, can I say the most important? I mean, like community identity one, because like everyone's going to have their own little take. Everyone's going to have their own variations. It'll all be like a part of the big conversation about about art or about tradition, but every little community is going to have like their own little special way of expressing it, their own little take on it. At Worlds, for example, like Ontario and Louisiana are rivals at decoy carving, like a very friendly rivalry, but like how different can two regions be? Right. How different can Toronto and New Orleans be? I think that's like the fact that they both have like their own like unique identities, unique like legacies, and unique like sensibilities. But I think we were talking earlier, like these people, decoy carvers, they are artists. They use their hands, they use their imaginations, they use their hearts, and they put that all out there into the art they make. And I think like what these like community arts are really good at doing is just like keeping art an everyday thing instead of just like an institutional thing, instead of being like exclusively a like a high art form. I think art is an everyday thing. Art is a thing in all of our lives, and I think the art situated like this in a community helps keep art recognizable in our everyday lives.
So we're going to have, obviously you're celebrating this 50th annual carving competition, but obviously then there's going to be a competition. What should we expect about that? And I guess it's going to be in Ocean City as usual, right?
Yeah, Ocean City Convention Center. What do we expect from usual? So every Friday at Worlds, we have the Living Legends like the award presentation, where the Ward Museum crowns like the living legends of the art of decoy carving. I will say, pulling out all the stops for Living Legends of the 50th. Like to be a living legend honored at the 50th, of course, is a huge deal. Nice round number, big anniversary. So there's going to be a lot of fanfare for that. I think, in general, it'll be sort of... I kind of see this as like a family reunion of like the extended family of carvers from... across America, across North America, the world, if I should be so bold. Because I think, like you said, 50th annual. It's a huge anniversary. It's a huge milestone. I think a lot of people are coming back for it. A lot of people wanna be there in person to celebrate this big accomplishment and this big enduring legacy of the Ward brothers this year. So I think the word I'd say for the 50th annual Worlds is it's a milestone. It's a celebration.
And you expect not obviously only the folks who are locally but in the States, but you're also expecting people from outside the country to be participating. I mean, even beyond, say, Canada.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a big Japanese contingent every year. And I was asking some people, like, what is your favorite at the opening for the exhibit? I was asking people, what's your favorite piece that like had never won a world championship? And I think the answer I heard a lot from people, they just said, what was the name of the giant Russian eagle? They kept saying giant Russian eagle. How did that guy bring that eagle from Russia? So, like, could we have another story? Like, do you remember that one year we saw the giant Russian eagle? That is to say, people come from the other side of the world with these just feats of art and imagination. And they come to Ocean City, Maryland with these these fruits of their their hands and their hearts and their like sweat.
By the way, how many competitors do you expect to see? I mean, any sense about that, or?
I don't have that offhand. I don't have that offhand, but I can tell you 27 pieces in the gallery.
Well, right, and you're going to get a lot more. I mean,
oh my God, yeah.
And of course, it's going to be held at the. And by the way, are you guys at the convention itself? Are you going to be doing anything special, or I mean, is there going to be presentations or anything, or?
Well, I will say Thursday night or Thursday evening at the Art League of Ocean City.
Mm-hmm.
There's the artist after hours, which all the artists like mingle with each other. People see all their favorite artists. It's like a casual thing. It's not like sitting there getting judged or anything. It's just seeing all of your friends again, seeing all like your favorite artists. And the other big fun thing at Worlds, of course, is the auction, just Saturday afternoon, which is like how some of these storied pieces, some of these big pieces like move across the country, get bought and sold, go elsewhere. But for a lot of people, I think it's just exciting to see what is at Worlds and what is going to what is like the what's like on the pulse of bird carving, of this art form. We have some we like the War Museum is going to be supplying some pretty impressive carvings this year at the auction. I don't think I can say any more about it right now, but it's gonna some real some milestone worthy things are going to be at the auction this year. I will say that. And Living Legends, which I already mentioned, which is an honor and a milestone in itself.
We've been speaking with Dominic Tartaglia. He is the curator and folklorist at the War Museum, and talking about the 50th anniversary of the World Championship Wildfowl Carving Competition and Art Festival, which will take place at the Convention Center in Ocean City. We appreciate you stopping to talk with us this morning.
Thank you.
This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for watching Delmarva Today, a production of Delmarva Public Radio. Production and audio engineering by Chris Rank. Hosted by Don Rush. For podcasts, visit delmarvapublicradio.net or subscribe to the Delmarva Today podcast on iTunes. You can also watch Delmarva Today on PAC 14 by tuning into Comcast Channel 14 or youtube.com/PAC 14.